City Current. Produced by Dakota Media Access. In-depth discussion with Bismarck and Mandan city officials. Watch on Government Access Channel 602 HD or tune in to Radio Access 102.5 FM. Always local, always current.
Welcome to City Current. I'm Mary Van Sickle. We're here in the studios at Dakota Media Access. It's kind of a special day. We have the Chamber Leadership class here.
There's a lot of activity in the building.
Yeah, annual event for us. So we love that, but it's special also because Jason Timonik is here. It's a Bismarck edition of City Current. We're here always to talk about the commission meeting last night. Mm-hmm. But yes, leadership class here is always fun. We have speakers, we have activity in the studio, but we have a lot of leadership, potential leaders in a community coming forward and learning a lot of fun things, and we get an opportunity to tell our story. So it's really, really nice. So we love that. So, and I am a alumni, class of 92, proud
Good deal.
member of the leadership alumni.
As an organization, we are fortunate. We have had participants in the last probably 3, 4, maybe even 5 years consistently. And
yes.
So I know it's a very competitive application process. They don't take every single person, but we are very gracious that they have made room for us. And I think being the organization that we are, I think we can add a lot of value to those conversations, regardless of who from the city of Bismarck is there, because there's such a dynamic, broad range of things that we can be a part of.
Yeah,
so,
it's great.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. So we appreciate being able to host them.
Mm-hmm.
So jumping into your agenda last night, but before we even get to that consent agenda, we want to talk about the addition that you saw on the screen last night.
If you were paying attention at home, excuse me, the upper right side of the corner, the upper right corner of your screen, there was a QR code.
There was.
And it works.
Yeah.
It takes you to the City of Bismarck's Agenda Center.
Yeah.
So that's a brand new addition, thanks to the technology that you guys can provide and some of the work on our end with Kalen Ost and his skills. And I told you before, I'll mention this, I actually was texting my father during the meeting last night, and I said, if you're at home watching the meeting, grab your phone, scan the code, see what it does. And he texted me back, and he said, it works.
And I did the same thing when I got home last night. I saw it up there and went, oh, yeah, we got to test it tonight. So
what does it do? It takes you to the city's Agenda Center, where you will find all of the agenda packets for every city commission meeting, advisory board, you name it. If it's something that we staff, it will be there on the Agenda Center.
So if you're watching and you go to the code during the live meeting, and the date is on the bottom of the meeting, if you do that, that agenda for that meeting will be pretty much front and center to you. If you're watching during a replay or during you've gone into the archives and watched the meeting, you may have to scroll back a little bit to find that particular agenda.
Right.
Because it just populates to the more current date.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
But
good idea, Jason.
Well, thank you. It's great to be able to offer more information. We know a lot of people are at home watching these meetings, and how many of them might have a computer or a tablet in front of them, and they do want to see what the commissioners are seeing, because that's exactly what you're going to get at the Agenda Center, is the same information the commissioners have in front of them to make those decisions.
Right. Yep.
So
Nope, it's
another
great.
demonstration
It
of
worked.
transparency.
Yeah.
And technology worked this time.
Yeah, for sure. So jumping into the consent agenda from last night, there wasn't one item that was pulled, but it was more clarification. But we wanted to talk about a couple of the items on there. One of them is the aviation worker screening services. This is a subject that came up, maybe a year ago.
About a year ago,
Or so. This is a federal mandate, an unfunded mandate,
Correct.
which is never
It's always more
lovely.
challenging.
Yes. That the requirement is to screen the aviation workers at the airport, the people behind the scenes. Seems to make sense, but again, unfunded, no support from the federal government to do that. So City of Bismarck took some action and said, wait a minute.
Outsourced it to a third party.
Yeah.
Is essentially what we're doing, because
Right.
it's additional responsibilities, and we don't have the staff resources to do it. We're not able to add additional personnel to address this effectively. So we went and do what we often do, is seek the help of a third party. And in this case, we've got a security company that will come in and perform all the responsibilities, so our staff don't have to do that. The company, I'm looking for the name here, EH Investigations and Security. And it was done on a closed bid situation, and the rate for the work that they will do will be $114 an hour.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
again, to your comment about an unfunded mandate over the course of a year, we're talking about somewhere north of $1 million
Yeah.
by the time it's all said and done.
So, but we also want to talk about, in the meantime,
Mm-hmm.
this has been implemented. Bismarck is following the mandate.
Correct.
But in the meantime, there's also a class action lawsuit that Bismarck has joined in with others in
That
the
is
community.
correct. I'm not sure of which other cities have joined this lawsuit, but yes, it is. We didn't initiate it, but we, as you said, we joined in the
Mm-hmm.
class action because it frankly, it's just a disruption to the work. Not saying screening shouldn't be done.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the point of my comments. The point is, again, we just don't have the resources to do it
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah.
And so
So-
if this is a requirement, then maybe there should be some incentive or some offset for the city to help fulfill that goal.
Sure. Okay. Well, that moved forward last night. Also, grant application, approval to apply for a grant. We don't usually talk about it, but this one's kind of fun. And it is coming from the AARP of North Dakota. Commission last night said, yes, move forward, apply for the grant. This would be to create an event in downtown Bismarck.
Right. It's part of the AARP Community Challenge Grant. And if the grant is awarded, the intent would be to close 5th Street from 5:30 to 8:30 on Tuesdays from July 1st to September 2nd for a variety of events, 10 events total. And it would be outdoor music, performances, lawn games, tables and chairs for the public to gather. It's just a way to activate the streets. You see this in a lot
Yeah.
of communities. Streets Alive becomes a phrase that you hear. It really just causes people to come out and engage in a way that they couldn't any other day because the street's open and there's traffic and all
Sure.
of the things. For the businesses that are along 5th Street, I would really hope that they would jump at this opportunity to engage in this as well and continue to provide that activation of that corridor.
Yeah. So do you anticipate a fairly quick answer to this application?
You know, I don't know when the decision would be made, but given that the program would start in July, we would need some time to work out through all the details if the grant is awarded. So I would assume within the next probably 6 to 8 weeks we should
Sure.
hear an answer.
And if it's successful, who is going to operate these events?
So it would run through the Community Development Department.
Okay.
And the planners, the planning staff are the ones that would be applying for
I
the
see.
grant. And if the grant were awarded, it would be $25,000 and it would include funds for supplies, performances, and programming. So it's more than just saying, "Oh, my brother's in a band, maybe I can get him to do a
Sure.
show." No, we're going to pay the professionals for the work that they're
Yeah.
doing because this is all part of a community
That's great.
event.
Well, in downtown Bismarck, Mandan has lots of events.
Mm-hmm.
Downtown Bismarck has had lots of events. Urban Harvest existed for many, many years on Thursday nights, and I believe KFYR now does a food festival, a truck and some food trucks and some entertainment on
Food
Thursdays.
on 4th, I think they call it. Yeah.
Yeah. So this will be another type of a event going on 5th Street
Right.
on Tuesdays,
Yep.
if successful. So you'll keep us posted on that. So last item on the consent agenda that we wanted to talk about was an award for bids for streetlights. Yeah, lots of different streetlights still being
Lots.
turned over into LEDs.
Yes, we've
Okay.
got about 900 new fixtures and then 270 plus of they call them the post top style. So it's kind of the decorative lighting that you see downtown. We've got a few neighborhoods where it's more of a fixture on top of a lamp rather than a fixture at the end of an arm where it would extend out. So the Cobra head style, that would be the one that extends out over the street. 907 of those. And
Wow.
then the post top, where it's the lamp on top of the post itself, about 272 of those. Engineer's estimate was just over $700,000 and 712 roughly, and the good bid, the low bid, was for $713,698. So excited to see that. It's a good project for us because as we transition away from the high pressure sodium bulbs, you're seeing a cleaner, brighter light. But for us, more importantly, it's a significant reduction in energy consumption.
And longer lasting?
Longer lasting,
Okay.
less maintenance. We're putting fewer people in a bucket truck out into harm's way to service these things.
Sure.
So there's a number of good reasons for us, and I guess personally I've noticed the light seems to there's not so much light disbursement. It's more cast on the ground rather than illuminating above the light fixture and you know, some of the adjacent areas. It's more of a concentrated light where it should be, which is along the traveling motorways and sidewalks for pedestrians.
So that's going to be this summer, this season. You'll see a lot of that happening.
And I guess I probably need to think about this before I say it, but I know we're getting very, very close to eliminating all of the old high-pressure sodium bulbs. And I don't know if this is the final year or if it was next year, but I believe there were direct intentions to quicken the pace because of the return that we are seeing on the cost savings in the energy.
All right.
Rather than do 100 a year, we said, you know what, let's just get them all done as quickly as we can. And so that's what we're doing here.
So we'll be seeing, and this will be all over, different neighborhoods.
Throughout the community.
Okay.
Yeah, there wasn't a map attached to the agenda packet, but we're all over the place.
No, not a lot of graphics last night that
you had to use your
accompanied.
imagination.
Yeah, for sure. So if you are just joining us, this is City Current. I am Mary Van Sickle here at Dakota Media Access. Today is a Bismarck edition of City Current. So Jason Timonek, City Administrator for the City of Bismarck, is here. And we are recording this on Wednesday, February 26th, the day after the commission meeting.
That's right.
So, regular agenda. Insufficiency of protest for a big street improvement district. It's that season.
Lots of blocks.
Yeah, lots of, and not enough protests, so this now goes to the bid process.
Correct. So
Okay.
Street Improvement District SI 585 had 9 units. We had talked about this previously. There's a map in the agenda packet from the previous meeting. Sufficient protest would mean more than half, more than 50% of the property owners. And Commissioner Risch had asked the question, is it exclusively, if there's 500 people, is it 251? And the answer is no, it's actually based on land area.
Okay.
So if you have a large parcel, a large property with street frontage that opposes a district or protests away from the district, it may have enough land by itself to just simply cause that entire district to not qualify.
Well, that seems logical because that would also reflect the amount of special assessment you're
Exactly.
going to pay. So someone with a larger plot of land, it seems fair that they would
Correct.
have more of a voice.
Yep.
Yeah.
So throughout the 9 districts, total number of protests received was about 20. The largest number in any one district was 10 protests out of a total of 416 parcels. So significantly lower than 50%. So I guess the short answer to all of this, SI 585, Street Improvement District 585 for 2025 will move forward.
Moves forward.
And it's a variety of...
As long as the bids come in.
Correct.
Right.
Yes, well, that would be the next
Okay.
step. You're absolutely right. We would be hopeful that the engineer's estimate and the bids are very close together.
Okay.
And it is a project that we can confidently move forward with this year.
It's that season.
Pretty soon it'll be pothole season too,
Yeah,
with these
I-
temperature changes that we've been experiencing.
I thought of that this morning driving
Yeah.
in. I went, oh boy, we got some potholes started already.
That freeze-thaw cycle from day and night, the water gets its way down into those lower
Yeah.
spots, and it really will start causing some trouble.
Be careful.
We'll be ready.
Yeah, when you're driving. Okay, let's talk chickens.
Chickens.
Chicken ordinance came back onto the agenda
did.
last night. This topic that was on the commission agenda in 2021.
Correct.
Okay, and just kind of hit a brick wall and went away.
It did. As I recall, in 2021, the Community Development Department staff did a tremendous amount of work to build an ordinance, work with stakeholders, work with local law enforcement, and worked the process through Planning Commission. In other words, the ordinance had a public hearing at Planning Commission. It received a favorable vote from the Planning Commission. The next step was to introduce it at City Commission on the consent agenda, and it was at that time that then Commissioner Steve Marquardt pulled the item and essentially made a motion to stop the process, and it never did see the light of day at City Commission. There was no public hearing at City Commission, and that was the end of the project. Well, fast forward 4 years. Only one of the commissioners that was at the table in 2021 is still there today. That's Commissioner Greg Zenker. And there was some smiles around the table last night as everyone was sharing their thoughts about chickens, and some
And
were
puns, many puns
Yes,
about
there was
chickens.
some foul jokes here and there. some commissioners said, I'm kind of ambivalent, kind of 50-50, and others, Commissioner Risch said, I think this is a great opportunity. And I think he's looking at it from the perspective of maybe educational for families with young kids. Obviously, if you're buying eggs at the grocery store right now, it's over $7 a dozen. But to know what the requirements would be as far as fencing or a coop or things like that, there's an investment that
Right.
we need to be made here as well.
Sure.
So, but we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. We're kind of talking about if it were to pass. That didn't happen last night. The direction that staff got from the consensus at the table was to start the process over again. And it's not to say, dump the ordinance that was drafted in 2021. That's not it at all. It's come back, review it, bring that stakeholder group back together again. And if it makes sense to move this forward, then it would start through that process with Planning Commission, with an introduction and a public hearing, with a recommendation to City Commission. Ultimately, if this does make its way back to the City Commission, just telegraphing it from last night, I don't know that it would be a unanimous vote. I think that there was some dissent at the table, and that's great. I don't have a problem with anything like that. But it will be interesting to see. And I know previously one of the concerns that was raised was this idea of our police department, our community service officers that are out doing the work for animal control would be responding to these loose chicken calls. And we don't have a place to store chickens at the animal impound. Typically it's dogs and cats. And so there could be some things that we would have to address as an organization. But in talking with my good friend from Mandan across the river, Jim Neubauer, City of Mandan allows chickens, and I don't believe they've had a real uptick in complaints or calls for service because there's a rogue chicken running around Main Street in Mandan or anything like that. So understand there's lots of opinions on this particular topic.
For sure. Well, and I mentioned I live in the ETA, and many of my neighbors have chickens as well as goats or horses and all of that. And I didn't even know that they had chickens in their yard until I was there and saw them. But not a problem. And it's also mentioned that many cities in the state already have this.
Right.
Allow this, and there really haven't been a lot of complaints. So.
Right. And I think Commissioner Risch was kind of poking at Commissioner Zenker a little bit, and he said, no one's going to require you to have chickens. This just enables you to choose if you want to have chickens in your yard. It'll be interesting going forward.
More to come on that one. So Doug Wiles, your Assistant City Administrator, is spearheading a update of your strategic planning process.
Correct.
Came forward last night with some bids.
Right. So Doug was leading the charge. We did a strategic plan first adopted in 2012. Then we did another one, an update in 2019. And so we're due again for a refresh. And this strategic plan, for those that aren't familiar with what a strategic plan is, in many ways it's a roadmap. It's a guidepost for us to aspire to things over the next 3 to 5 years. And goals and objectives. Generally there's a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. All of this is facilitated with a consultant, and that was what was on the agenda last night. Doug and a large team, I want to say 12 or 13 different city staff members, along with Commissioner Zenker, evaluated 7 different proposals that were submitted by various consultants. In the end, interviews were conducted with 2 of the consultants, and the consultant that was chosen by the selection committee is a name that some of us will remember because he helped us with our first strategic plan back in 2012. Patrick Ibarra, and the company that Patrick owns is called the Mejorando Group. I was fortunate enough to be a part of that project back in 2011 and 2012, and Patrick he's a very dynamic individual, very good at the work he does, and I was glad to see his name in the hat because he's familiar with us. And throughout my time in city administration, I mentioned we adopted the first strategic plan in 2012. I wasn't in administration at that time. I started in 2016, but throughout that whole time, Mr. Ibarra had kept up with Keith and I, and emails periodically, calling and checking in, and hey, I saw Bismarck in the headlines, and how are things? And so he's very aware of who we are and what we do, and I think we're going to get some tremendous work out of Mr. Ibarra and the committee. This strategic plan is different than the last one. In 2018-19, the plan that we did was very public-facing. We had a booth at Street Fair. We did a lot of community engagement, town hall, And it was the residents' time to tell us what did they want from the city in the future. And we did some wonderful projects. We did a call for projects that spawned a number of great ideas. We've talked about this before with DMA moving from its location on 4th Street to here. This strategic plan, we're going to be selfish. We're inwardly focused on this one. We need to make sure, as a new administrator, as a new assistant city administrator, we've got a new city attorney, we've got lots of new faces.
Yeah.
Are we maximizing ourselves as an organization in the right way? Are we putting our talents to the best resources? With Doug and I, it's been my goal to separate the work that we do, and we don't need to both be in the same place at the same time. There's not a lot of value in that. So my question for Mr. Ibarra, administration, are we structured the right way? Should we be thinking about a different internal organizational chart? The way it is today as a city administrator, I'm essentially the direct supervisor of all the department directors. Okay, that's great. I have no trouble with that. That's 14 or 15 people with a dynamic, diverse cross of departments from all over the place. Should we be looking at it a little differently? Should there be different opportunities for the assistant city administrator to become more prepared to move into that administrator role at some time in the future? I guess thinking about succession planning, thinking about just organizational structure, goals and objectives, I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah,
We're ready
and
for it.
you said earlier, too, this is basically an update of the major plan.
Right.
So, and I would think that Mr. Ibarra, because of his familiarity with the city, this is going to be a benefit. He should be able to hit the ground running on this
Definitely.
one.
Yep.
And the time frame for this planning process is shorter, a little more condensed
It's very
than
condensed.
your previous one.
Yes, previously we had taken a year and a half in some
Okay.
cases. In this situation, because it is a smaller scope, it's internally focused, we're not going to need to engage with the stakeholders, the citizens, nearly as much. And so the timeline here is hopefully by September, maybe even a little sooner, thinking about when we adopt our budget for 2026. And so
Okay.
if there are projects that come from this effort, things that we should be thinking about organizationally, the timing will be great because
Yeah.
then we can work that into the budget process for 2026 if there are going to be some potential
Sure,
expenses or things
that
along
makes
the way.
sense. Okay, well, more to come on that one.
Definitely.
Yeah, so it starts pretty much right now.
What Doug received last night was permission from the commission to engage in the contract negotiation. Essentially, he brought forward much like Gabe does, the best bid. Doug brought forward the best proposal, and the commission signed off unanimously, and so those conversations will engage, and we'll see Mr. Ibarra here very soon.
Sounds good. So, last item on our agenda from last night is a legislative update. You provided the commission with some tidbits on things that are happening now that crossover is
It's here.
upon us.
Yeah, I drove by the Capitol last night after 8:30, and the parking lot on the west side of the legislative wing was still full, which tells me that the House and the Senate, or maybe just the House, was still meeting. And then when I came to work this morning down 4th Street, the parking lot was empty. So that signals to me that they have hit crossover,
Yeah.
which means they get a little break. They'll re-engage next week. But really what crossover is, it's all the bills that started in the House that survived, jump over to the Senate, and then vice versa. Any bills
Sure.
from the Senate will cross over to the House. And so that way the bicameral group has equal chance to look at it and make some amendments.
Yeah.
So what were we talking about last night? We were talking about House Bill 1020. This is the bill that would provide the budget for the State Water Commission. This is a particular bill that we are very interested in, as we've talked about here in the past with the South Bismarck Flood Control Project, $172 million estimate on a project that FEMA has deemed appropriate and necessary. Through our intentional engagements beginning back in April, May of 2024, between Utility Operations Director Michelle Closey, City Engineer Gabe Schell, myself, meeting with state leaders at the local issues, water resources, all of that, just presenting this project, presenting the information. Fast forward to where we are today, the state has identified a significant amount of money that would go towards the South Bismarck Flood Control Project. So we've got $50 million grant from FEMA. The state has appropriated, I believe it was $73 million roughly over potentially 2 bienniums to help pay for that project. and then whatever the remaining amount would be, that is yet to be determined how that would be paid for. But the broadest answer is that it would be borne locally, meaning the city's going to have a contribution to this project as well. It can't just be exclusively 100% grant funded. So that was one of the bills that was reported out. It passed the House. We'll jump over to the Senate side. We will continue to monitor that and work with the senators that will help us. Representative Nathy locally has been a great champion for this project. He and Gabe Schell have been continuing to communicate throughout the legislative process, so we were very grateful for that. One of the other bills that we're watching is House Bill 1176. This is the property tax bill that, as written, would cause a 3% cap on general fund property tax collections. And the City Commission has not taken a formal position. Generally, it would either be to support or oppose. We will just continue to monitor and work with as many people as we can to help share the information. There are some concerns from our perspective of what a 3% cap would do, but we understand the citizens are looking for something. We've heard the word reform, we've heard the word relief. This is a governor-supported bill. It's got a lot of the heavy hitters from state leadership on this one as well. And as it crosses over, we're going to continue to work with the senators to help them understand how it would impact the city of Bismarck. Okay. There's 354 other communities in North Dakota that would have similar conversations about what a 3% cap would
look like. A lot of eyeballs on this one,
Definitely.
For sure.
And it's more than just a 3% cap on property tax collections. There's a lot of homestead credit information. The bill itself is over 30 pages, but there's just a couple of paragraphs that are really dealing with municipal government. There's a lot of other features in there with primary residency and commercial tax credit and things like that as well.
Okay.
So, and then if I can just take a little bit more time, we kind of broke off the script that we've been using, and we spent a little bit of time talking about Senate Bill 2307. That one passed the Senate late last week, I believe. This is the bill that would, I'll use the word compromise, the way our libraries and school libraries could function. The bill essentially is dealing with materials that would be deemed explicit or concerning, and it would enable a patron of the library to request that those materials be moved into a separate area of the library in a locked cabinet that would only be accessible to patrons that are 18 years and older with proof of ID. What it also does, if the patron requests that book to be relocated, and the library staff go through the process and deem that it is not inappropriate and it should remain on the shelves, that library patron could then appeal that decision to the state's attorney. And so now we're talking about, in Burley County, we're talking about Julie Lawyer and the staff that she has, and the work that they're doing would now be required to review and evaluate this type of material. Ultimately, a decision would be rendered at that point, but the alarming part, and I wanted to bring this to the commissioner's attention last night, there is language in the bill that could actually cause the state's attorney to press charges against local librarians and school librarians for the materials on the shelf that someone else felt was perhaps inappropriate. And so Commissioner Cleary was quick to note that this bill, a similar bill like this, came up 2 years ago, and the City Commission took a position at that time to oppose. As the commissioners individually went around the table, most of them shared their thoughts that general consensus was to oppose this bill and to support the Library Foundation, and Friends of the Library, which have already taken a position. City of Bismarck City Commission has agreed to oppose this bill, and so we will add this one to the list.
Nice.
We will engage appropriately throughout the rest of the session to give our support to either amend the bill in a way that is workable for librarians, or just simply have the bill go away.
I think Commissioner Cleary also said that there are safeguards already in place in the library. These are professional people that run these institutions. They know how to look for this type of content, and at this point there hasn't really been a problem.
Right.
So it's a solution looking for a problem to some degree. But she did talk about there are safeguards in place. Should they find content that's questionable, it's reviewed extensively.
Right.
So,
and she noted, Commissioner Cleary noted, that many of the library staff, the librarians, have master's degrees in library science. I mean, they are trained professionals in this craft, and I guess as a resident of Bismarck, I trust that they will do their jobs. And
Yeah. Well, that's good that you brought this one forward too. So
yeah,
be watching this one as it
definitely
goes
will
forward.
will get some attention through crossover and into the rest of the session. I think there's a lot of voices on both sides, and it'll be an interesting discussion as we go forward.
Yeah, for sure. So that wrapped up the meeting last night, but we do want to mention, actually it was under other business, it was brought up, there's a big public meeting on the Tyler Parkway
Correct.
street project that's proposed. So this is starting the process, getting some public input. It's Monday night.
Monday, March 3rd, from
Okay.
6 to 8 p.m. at Elk Ridge Elementary, which is on the north side of Bismarck. Ivory Lane, I believe, is the address for the street. Yes, we are proposing to construct that section of Tyler Parkway to connect the north section to the south section. This is the biggest chunk of the roadway yet to be done.
And this is no surprise, sorry for the interruption, but
Right.
this has been part of the master plan for,
Couple
since
of
the
decades.
beginning of that area being developed.
Yep,
So this is
definitely.
not new, but boy, it's a big challenge geographically, topographically.
Yep.
In that area is, you got that big coulee and yeah,
There's a reason we haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not going to be easy.
Sure.
If the project moves forward as planned, this would be one of those major arterial roadways that is funded through the half-cent sales tax collection. So there would be no special assessments to adjacent property owners. This is all paid for through sales tax collections.
that's significant.
That's a huge piece to help this project be successful. Because if there were special assessments on residential properties, it would be
And where
a lot.
we were talking earlier about this, where this actually ends up with this connection, takes
Mm-hmm.
this all the way north to 110th.
110th Avenue. So Tyler Parkway in city limits becomes 15th Street outside city limits. So if you get up to 57th Avenue or Highway 1804, another mile north of 57th Avenue, you'll see the street sign that says 15th Street Northwest. That's an indicator that you're in the county because it doesn't say Tyler Parkway. But if you look at the map, what we call Tyler Parkway starts at essentially exit 157 by the convenience store there, and it will travel north uninterrupted to 110th Avenue. That's a major north-south corridor.
Very big, yeah. I would think that once completed, it would alleviate some congestion on Washington,
River
even
Road.
State Street, certainly River Road too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it gives just another alternative route.
So for people that are interested, there's an open house from 6 to 8 at Elk Ridge Elementary, but there will be a program at 6:30. And the program will be a collaboration between city staff and the consulting engineer, Apex Engineering, that we have hired to do this work. One of the questions last night, I believe it was Commissioner Connolly, had asked if it was a public information meeting or a public input meeting. And I guess the difference there is, if I had to guess, public information is the city sharing information, not necessarily receiving feedback.
Right.
Input implies that the citizens will have an opportunity to share their concerns, ask questions, learn about the project. Yes, it is the latter. It would be a public input meeting.
Will there be options explored? Will there be part of the presentation, or the route is pretty well
The
established?
route is pretty well
Okay.
defined based on topography. I have not seen any of the presentation to this point. I do plan to go to hear what the concerns are and what the ideas are. And some of the concerns relate to habitat, wildlife. There's a lot of critters that run around in this coulee. But there's also a lot
Yeah.
of recreation that happens, whether it be mountain biking, snowshoeing, hiking. There's a lot of people that gravitate towards this natural amenity, and it is the city's intention to preserve as much as possible. But again, thinking about transportation and connectivity, emergency services, firefighter response, ambulance response up to those northwest parts of town will be shortened by this route.
So the route's pretty well determined.
It is.
And this is operating through City Engineering Department. Do you also have a consultant that'll be working hand in hand
Yep.
with City
Apex
Engineering?
Engineering
Apex.
is doing the
Okay.
design for us
Okay.
on this one.
Well, I would think some of those nuances, whether it's wildlife or recreation, can be incorporated. That's why the input is important.
Right.
To hear some of these concerns, and some of that can be incorporated into the design work as it moves forward, because they've got the route, but
Yeah.
I would assume the design work is not.
Not done yet.
No.
Nope. So construction on this one would be anticipated for 2026.
And there's time.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's not.
2025, we're going to be doing East Century Avenue, the extension, we've talked about that here, the extension from where it terminates today over to 52nd Street, that would be 25's construction. 26 is scheduled for Tyler Parkway.
Okay. More to come on that one. That'll be a
Certainly.
big one for
Yep.
sure. So just wrapping up our time today, not a lot of time, but I want to take a moment to talk about new development for us. If I could prop the screen up, we have a new app. We've had the Dakota Media Access apps up for a year or so. And if you haven't gotten those, please download the Dakota Media Access apps.
They're free.
They're free, and government access is available, and community access is available on those apps. You get a live screen of whatever is being scheduled and airing at the moment, but they also have an archive of content. But now we've just launched Radio Access, the app, and it is amazing. So here on our main webpage, now we would jump to the Radio Access webpage, which, by the way, is also pretty darn new. This new Radio Access website has been updated, courtesy of Tom Marple doing the design work for the graphics, which is super fun. So you want to get in there and move around our website. But also our apps are now available for Radio Access, either Android, Apple, wherever you get your apps. You can get in there and you have immediate access into the content of Radio Access. We do a lot of this in-house. We had a young part-time employee named Jackson Timonic, who works for us here, who did a lot of the heavy lift.
I know that guy.
A steep learning curve for Mr. Jackson, working hand in hand with Justin Cancelleri, our radio operations manager, getting this new website up and launched, and then the next step was getting these apps in place. So we're excited.
It's slick.
Works really, really well.
I put the Radio Access app on my phone last night and went straight to my favorite podcast, which
Yeah.
is History Hot Dish.
Of course it is.
Of course it is. Has to be.
Mr. History. Yeah.
But it's great. It's for a while there, the website was a little clunky. It didn't quite adapt to my phone, and then I was informed that the apps are now ready to go, and
they're so smooth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
it's
like-
great. Yeah, you should jump right to the listen page so you get whatever is scheduled in the moment, but you can get into the archives of the podcasts and all our great
For more information
music
on what was
programs that
discussed in
our
this
local
episode of City
volunteer
Current.
DJs put together and curate their programs. So good stuff, good listening. It was a major hurdle to
shot
get
in the arm
this
for
all.
Dakota Media Access.
Yes, really nice. Yeah, lots of
And
lots
this
of good content.
is a nice alternative to listening to the radio in your car. Given it's a low power frequency, you don't have a huge radius. You travel west of
Good
Mandan
point.
and you're
Very good
going to
point.
lose your
Yep.
your antenna.
Yep.
This way,
It's everywhere.
long car drives, you
Yeah.
can have city commission the whole way.
Yep, and we've been streaming on radioaccess.org from the beginning too, but that you have to jump through a few things
Right.
to get to that content, whereas the app, boom, you're there. You just hit it once and you're where you need to be. So thanks
stuff.
thanks for listening. Thanks for letting me give that little plug for our apps. So thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
All right, we'll see you in a couple
I
weeks.
will be back
All
again.
right, and thank you for tuning into this edition of City Current.
For more information on what was discussed in this episode of City Current, visit bismarcknd.gov or call 701-355-1300. If you have suggestions, comments, or issues you would like addressed in future episodes, contact us at info@freetv.org. This program airs on Government Access Channel 2 and 602 in HD, or on Radio Access 102.5 FM. It's also available as a podcast on radioaccess.org and as a video viewing link at freetv.org. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of City Current.